Hey everybody, so just out here for a walk on my lunch break and thought that I would talk to you guys a little bit about my reaction to the Canadian federal election that happened last night. So here in Canada, we've got, kind of a couple main parties, just as you would see in the US. Instead of the Democrats and Republicans, you typically see the Liberals and the Conservatives. And just a quick disclaimer, I would say that the Liberals and what that stands for, I know that in the US, even among some of my, kind of more left-leaning friends, liberal sometimes has a different connotation, and from what I can gather, it means a little bit different thing here in Canada than it does in the US. But certainly I would say that the Conservative Party is more like the Republican Party. There are certainly a lot of parallels there. So just in case you guys are not from Canada and you're watching this, that's sort of the lay of the land. And so, of course, in Canada, there's also the NDP, the New Democratic Party, the Green Party, which is very focused on climate, and then several other parties like the Bloc Québécois, which is the main party coming out of the province of Quebec, and they did really well last night. And then, of course, you've got a few other parties, and I'll talk about a couple of those as I go along here. But one of the things that just actually real quick, talking about the results. So the Liberals got reelected as a minority government this time around. They were not able to hold a majority government. I'll let you guys figure out how the Canadian politics and the ridings and all the seats of Parliament work. But so how do I feel about that? I don't want to give any opinions on any actual politicians or parties really overall, or make anything personal, but I feel okay with seeing a liberal government, especially for me, for the values that I have and the things that are important to me and what I feel is best for the country overall, especially seeing that as instead of a conservative government. Not everyone's going to have that same opinion. That's fine. One of the key things that we saw throughout the campaigns and in the live election results and show that was going on last night is that everybody's talking climate change. So that's the main takeaway for me here is every party has a different plan, well, except for those who didn't even really have a plan. But there are different ideas on what we need to do, but climate change was a massive, massive issue with this year's election. And that's great to see. People are thinking about not only Canadians, but also the rest of the world and, the future on this planet and what we need to do. To varying degrees of importance, I would say, from each party, but like the Green Party, that's basically their platform. The Conservatives, on the other hand, did not have a plan for emissions controls and things like that. But for me, it's good to see that. It's good to see that environmental issues that impact us all, regardless of political opinion, is important to everybody. So that's kind of nice. Now, of course, as a vegan, one of the obvious things that I think as well, regardless of political party and regardless of the stance of the party and what their plan is to reduce emissions, obviously the easiest thing every single individual can do is to go vegan, change what is on your plate, which changes, the environmental impacts of your food. And people don't realize that animal agriculture is such a huge, huge contributing factor. And of course, that is very politicized as well, because, the conservative folks are mainly in big farmer areas and big oil and gas areas. So it makes sense that they're not going to address the same types of things because it's against their interests, right? But there was one party that actually did have a platform that was about the animals, and so that was the Animal Protection Party of Canada. And That's a new thing. I've got some friends here in Atlantic Canada who were running in their ridings for that party. And I'll just turn around here because, can't go too far. I gotta go back to the office. But, so those people were running for the animals and to bring awareness to those issues. And I mean, the reality is, I think that nobody really expected that they were going to win or be elected. But if nothing else, having a political party, having your name out there, and people understanding that and what you stand for, and giving yourself a chance to speak to folks who would otherwise not even be in a position to talk about animal rights. If nothing else, it plants the seeds and it gets people thinking about animal rights issues, and it starts building for something that could potentially gain more traction. So if nothing else, even if it doesn't have any political success, it can have some social success and some sociological impacts. So that was really cool to see that, and I felt really good to have some friends who were running in that party. A couple of other parties that I thought was worth mentioning, because I think a lot of people don't realize how many independent or small parties there are in Canada, and it's probably the same for the US. We got a Communist Party, and obviously they didn't win any seats, I don't think. And there's the Star Party of Canada. They're all about space exploration, but also declassifying stuff and trying to work with potential extraterrestrials and whatnot. There's all kinds of other parties, and it's interesting to spend time learning about them because, while they may never have a chance to really win anything, it's still kind of cool to see what they're talking about. For me, I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, if we care about the environment and we care about the animals, then there was really only one or two parties worth considering. I get that, but I have to give credit where it's due to the Liberal Party. Canada's new food guide got passed through. I don't know how much that had to do with the Liberal Party and Trudeau, but I'm assuming that in order to get a heavily plant-based food guide passed through the system, you need to have people in power who are willing to rely on the science and rely on the data and understand what kind of impact that has on public health, on the farmers of the area. So you want to start switching subsidies over and stuff like that. And that that came through on the Liberal watch. So I mean, was it a big part of their platform? No, but it did happen. So I've got to give it credit. For me, it's easy to say, hey, I'm not that political of a guy, or it's easy to say I'm not really into politics. And I get that, right? But not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody has that privilege to be able to say, it doesn't really matter who's in charge because it doesn't really affect me. There's a lot of people. Indigenous rights was another very, very massive item that was on the agenda here throughout the campaign. And we actually did see a lot of Indigenous people get voted in. So there's 338 parliamentary seats. I don't know how many of those are now held by Indigenous folks, but it's certainly on the rise, and I love to see that. Canada has traditionally failed the Indigenous population. There are plenty of treaties that were not upheld. There are plenty of situations going on where people have to boil their water, or even after that sometimes it's so horrible that it's not even drinkable, and things like that need to be rectified. So I think overall we are addressing some concerns that affect everybody in the nation. You're never going to make everybody happy. You can't win for everybody because everyone's going to have a different outlook on what's important. But I don't know. Overall, I'm happy, like I say, with how things turned out. The main points of contention for me are, I don't want anybody to get into a position of power who is going to further oppress people who have been traditionally oppressed. At the same time, that doesn't give a free pass to anybody who's not an oppressor. You still have to be thinking about what's going to happen with the climate, what's going to happen with healthcare, with all of these other things. You know, how are we going to treat our indigenous population moving forward? Are we going to make some amends for the atrocities that have happened in the past? So there's still a lot to go on there, but one thing is for sure, I'll never vote for the people who aren't going to do anything except for rich white folks, right? Like, as a white guy, I've got some privilege there that I'm willing to accept, that, you know, a lot of these topics may not really affect me, so I could vote conservative and it probably wouldn't be harmful to me personally. But I'm not going to do that because it doesn't align with who I am. But anyway, just a little bit of a recap there while I'm out walking. Hey, I don't know. Whether you care about politics or not, I think it's still important to understand what's happening. Because even if it doesn't really affect you in your day-to-day life, it does set the tone for what kind of a place you're going to be living in the next few years. And it also sets precedents, potentially, for things taking a turn, you know. I think about people who weren't necessarily political in the mid to late 30s in Germany. So they kind of, you know, let things happen maybe. I mean, essentially it comes down to this, and I'll draw the political parallel to veganism and to animal rights, is if you are silent or complacent, then you've chosen the side of the oppressor. You know, I think it was, and I think that was MLK who made that quote originally, and which I obviously didn't quote exactly, but you know, you can't just do nothing, right? You can't take a centrist mindset. If you see an injustice or if you see an area for improvement, I think we owe it to ourselves to at least understand the issues that are on the table. And if we see something that's going to affect people in a negative way, maybe it's not us, we should act upon that. And we should try to be at least a little bit responsible about leaving the world a better place than the one we came into. I could see myself getting into politics. Not because I like politicians, not because I like politics, but I don't know. I think it's important to try to inspire people to create positive change, and you've got to be a little bit realistic at the same time. I mean, you can't expect that things are going to go, you know, completely green overnight or something like that, but you can just keep pushing forward. So anyway, that's my wrap up. I got to get back to the office, get a bite to eat, and well, most importantly, so they pay me, get back to work. All right. Thanks for listening along. Let me know your opinions down below. Let's keep it cool. Let's keep it calm and not go too crazy down there. But all opinions are welcome. So we'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.